Lincolnshire and Lincolnite joint debate. In just a couple of days, you'll be going to the polls to vote for Lincolnshire's next Police and Crime Commissioner. And what we do know is that there will be a new person in that position, and it will be one of these four people standing before you today. Delighted to say all four candidates in the race for the job are here tonight after accepting our invitation to debate the issues this evening. We hope it'll be lively. We'll hope it'll be good-mannered. We don't want to get the real police involved in this evening. So we'll hope you'll join us here on BBC Radio Lincolnshire on 94.9 FM, and also if you're watching on the Lincolnite website, and you'll be able to see it all again very soon after the broadcast tonight. I'll be here with the candidates on stage. My BBC Radio Lincolnshire colleague Alex Rhodes is in the audience. Alex.
Hello, yes, Scott. I'm going to be in the audience amongst the people who, come Thursday, have all the power, who will be choosing who's going to be Lincolnshire's next Police and Crime Commissioner. We've got a couple of questions pre-prepared already, but I will, if you stick your hands up, I will try and make it round to all of you if I can.
So a busy night ahead. If you're joining in on social media, on Twitter, then the hashtag you need is hashtag LinksPCC, if you're tweeting about the debate tonight. We drew lots to decide the order in which the candidates make their opening statements. They'll all get a minute to give you details of why they think they should be the new Crime and Police Commissioner. And we'll start with Lucinda Preston from Labour.
Thank you. My name is Lucinda, and I'm the Labour candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner. Unlike the other candidates, I am not a career politician. I'm a teacher and a school manager, and have never stood for a political position before in my life. I am driven by the desire to be in public service. I've done that in my teaching, and I would bring that quality to this role. We have experienced unprecedented cuts in the last 5 years, in fact 6 years, to policing. 10% loss of police officers and 7% loss of PCSOs in Lincolnshire over the last 6 years. If I was elected, I would fight for more funding to get more police officers and more PCSOs. But more than that, I would not be taking this job for the paycheck. I would sacrifice part of my salary, take only what I have now as a teacher, and sacrifice the rest to put it into a project for crime prevention.
Okay, that's your time up, Lucinda Preston for Labour. Now for the Lincolnshire Independents, Daniel Simpson.
My name is Daniel Simpson, and I am standing as a Lincolnshire Independent candidate for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections on May the 5th. I come from a background of a small rural business which came up until 2015, and in that time I also served 12 years as a district councillor on the East Lindsey District Council. I've also served 4 years as a school governor in my local community, and I still serve on the local parish council, which enables me to keep on my feet on the ground. I'm quite clear what the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner is, and I do have the time and the energy to do that job, as I've always been used to working very long hours, 7 days a week, and I do have the commitment to do it. On top of that, I am standing as a Lincolnshire Independent, and the reason for that is I firmly believe that the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner should be distant from those parties in government and also those parties in control of the county council.
Daniel, that's your time up. If I can also introduce to you for UKIP, Victoria Ayling.
Thank you. I'm already a Lincolnshire County Councillor, and my incentive for standing for the post was listening to residents' concerns, and one of the biggest concerns was crime and antisocial behaviour. I am not a career politician. I started out as a barrister, worked for blue chip companies and family businesses, so I can offer you legal background as well as a business background. In addition, I've announced who my deputy is, a very experienced police officer in London for 22 years before moving up here to become a local businessman and Horncastle town councillor, and he can offer policing experience. So I'm the only one who can offer you a combination of policing experience, legal experience and business experience. I would want us to get more funding, and I believe, as UKIP, we have all the advantages of being an independent, that we have no whip and are only answerable to the residents and no greasy pole or political hierarchy. But behind me is a massive
Victoria,
lobbying
there we go, that's your
force.
time up. And Mark Jones for the Conservatives.
My name is Mark Jones. I am standing as the Conservative Party candidate, and we have here 4 political party candidates. But this role is not so much about that particular aspect. It's about the capabilities of the individual to do this role for Lincolnshire. And that is where I think my experience is of managing a £1 billion budget for the County Council, running my own business, and working in the community for community groups and other bodies like that will come as being invaluable in this post. This is about working in partnership. It's about bringing together local government, national government, police, and third sector bodies to actually help with victim support, with policing, crime reduction, and a wide range of services. And that is where I think I will excel at this job.
Mark Jones for the Conservatives there. Now, you've heard all the opening statements from the candidates. They will be able to sum up at the end for you as well. We'll do something similar then. I just want to throw it open to the audience because you've probably heard that the last PCC election, which of course was for the first Lincolnshire Police and Crime Commissioner, had a very low turnout, just 15% of people actually voted who are eligible to vote. Now, this is not very scientific because I suspect by the fact that you're here, you are really interested in this role, or else you wouldn't be here. But how many people voted last time? Just a quick straw poll, a show of hands. Yeah, pretty much most people, which is what you would expect. Of course, that wasn't reflected in the turnout. On that turnout, 15%, some people have said this is a pointless role. There shouldn't be a police and crime commissioner. Mark Jones, Conservatives, do you think it is a worthwhile role or not?
It absolutely is a worthwhile role. And a particular example I would give, the average police authority under the old system used to get 20 public contacts a month. Now the average PCC gets 7,000 public contacts a year. That is a significantly more accountable position, and that is what we need. We need the public to understand what this role is, what the responsibilities of the individual is, and then it's down to the PCC to make sure that they put themselves in front of the public to engage with them and be accountable.
Victoria Ayling, UKIP, is it a role that people are excited about in the public?
No, and I was one of those that used to think it was another wasted layer of government and a waste of money. Until I learnt more about the role, it means we are directly responsible to the people, to the residents of Lincolnshire. The police authority used to cost £170,000 more per year to run than the Police and Crime Commissioner's office, so it saves money. Also, more proactive and transparent because the old police authority tended to be run by people who, it was a Buggins turn type of culture.
Daniel Simpson from the
This is
Lincolnshire
a very important role, and it's the only way that the public and anyone who's got issues and concerns around policing and crime reduction have an opportunity to have their say and influence where the priorities are placed on policing. The Commissioner's job is to get out there and engage with the public, partnerships, business, and all those agencies who work in the arena of crime reduction, victim support, and a whole host of bodies. And on the back of that knowledge, which the Commissioner picks up, he will then place the emphasis on the budget to reflect the views of those people that he has listened to, rather than the agenda that may well be required by the Chief Constable, because there are two different issues going on there. What the public want is not necessarily what the Chief Constable wants, and even national government. And it's absolutely vital that the Commissioner ensures that policing in Lincolnshire is not compromised by national policing obligations and a government that's out of touch with what's going on locally.
Lucinda Preston, Labour.
This is clearly an important role. It is a link between the community, people of Lincolnshire, and the police, and it can be extremely useful and, in fact, pivotal to making those links between different agencies and between the different businesses and all the different stakeholders within Lincolnshire. But what's key to understand is when you get elected to that role, you have to be independent. You have to work as an independent person. You are not supposed to be partisan. And I think it's important to note that at least one of our candidates tonight has said that they are not sure that they are going to give up their county council post. And I think that's an important point to make. If I was elected, if I'm elected on Thursday, I will be making sure that I am not being party political when I take that post. I will not be a councillor, and I will be genuinely listening to ordinary people, because I am an ordinary person. I'm a teacher. I'm someone who understands. The other candidates here have all made political decisions, as in they've been elected to different posts, and this is just one more post for them. I would be someone who's there actually listening to them.
Just about, we'll go with Mark Jones on that. Is this, I mean, people are saying it's not political, but you're all from different parties in one way or other. So it is political, isn't it?
I think, to be fair, whenever you have an election, it's reasonable for people to want to know what your viewpoint generally is. And whether that's as a Conservative, whether it's UKIP, whether it's Labour, to suggest that people aren't interested in your general viewpoint, I think is incorrect. But this is about much more. It's about the skill set you have to actually do the role. And I think it's the two things together that matter.
But can I just come in there? I think this is an important point to make, though, is the skill set is absolutely vital. And I know I've got that skill set. But equally, when somebody goes to the ballot box, they need to know what it is they're voting for. As PCC, people expect that person will act in an independent manner, impartial. And certainly the gentleman here, Mark Jones, has not decided yet whether he's going to give up his Tory county council post. And that's absolutely vital that people know that when they go to the ballot box. This should not be politicised in that way.
Victoria Ailing, UKIP.
It would be hypocritical for me to be a UKIP county councillor and then stand as an independent for Police and Crime Commissioner. But there's also a danger that an independent is isolated when it comes to lobbying for funding. I won't be isolated. All the advantages of an independent candidate, but without the ties of a hierarchy, but with a massive lobbying force behind me to actually push the government to give us the funding we need. And yes, I will give up my county council seat if I'm elected right away.
You're from the Lincolnshire Independent. Just clarify what that means. Is
well,
it a party or?
The Lincolnshire Independents are clearly a registered party. And the reason for that being is that as soon as you have a group of people who engage in any aspect of political life, you then have to, for purposes of transparency, you've clearly got financial issues going on, and you then have to register. And as soon as you register a group of people for financial purposes, you by default become a political party, whether you like it or you don't. Now, the reasoning why I stand as a Lincolnshire Independent, you know who I am. I could stand as an ordinary, I could stand as Joe Blogg's ordinary independent, and you've no idea.
We'll leave it there.
You've no idea who I am. You know exactly.
Okay, Daniel, thank you.
Who you're voting.
Now let's go to the audience. Alex Rhodes from BBC Lincolnshire is in the audience, and you've got our first question.
Yes, I've managed to make myself quite comfortable here, Scott. I'm with Jack Walker, who's got the first question today.
Thanks, Alex. My question is, what life experiences do the candidates have that they think qualify them for the role of PCC?
So it's almost like this is the interview for the job, if you like. What is on your CV? Victoria Ailing, UKIP.
I touched on it earlier. I started out as a barrister, and I've had jobs in the real world with blue chip companies and in family businesses. I'm also a mother whose children have been educated in Lincolnshire, though my youngest is still at school in Horncastle. I'm a Lincolnshire County Council. How this qualifies me is this. I have a very sound legal background, business background, and also understand a lot of the issues concerning parents, people of Lincolnshire, because of my council role, because I live amongst you, and because I have children at the schools. I have lived amongst the people I want to get the best possible policing for, and I know the concerns that they want to feel safe and be safe, whether it's our roads, in our homes, or on our streets.
Daniel Simpson for Lincolnshire Independence.
Yes. Well, I bring to this role my experience as a district councillor for 12 years. And in that role, I was very used to working with the public. I thoroughly enjoyed working with the public and dealing with their issues and concerns over a whole variety of a whole big remit. I'm also used to scrutinising budgets, scrutinising performance, and I'm very used to challenging very clever and very senior people. I do not roll over, and I have no qualms at all of making people accountable for the decisions that they make on your behalf.
Lucinda Preston for Labour.
I've been a teacher for over 14 years now. I've been a teacher, I'm currently a school manager, I'm head of a department, I'm also an associate assistant head teacher. So I've got huge experience of managing budgets and of dealing with a great many different stakeholders, students, parents, other different bodies that you have to work with as a teacher. And I know the importance of making those links between who you are, where you're working for, and the community. And there's no one knows more about working within a community than a teacher does. I think also it's quite important to think about the fact that as a teacher you have a public position for which you are very accountable. If my department results are poor, I am very accountable for that, not only to myself and to my school, but to my students and to the wider community. You have to really maintain high standards, working against often quite difficult positions in terms of finance. And so I understand what it's like to make difficult decisions, and I also know what it's like to have to work very, very hard.
Bring in Mark Jones on this for the Conservatives.
Yes, well, I think the first thing that's important is I'm Lincolnshire born and bred. I have my family here scattered throughout the county, and I intend to stay in Lincolnshire and live my life. So Lincolnshire matters to me, and it matters to my family. So I'm coming at public service from the point of view of all those little annoyances that get on everybody's nerves, the broken bus shelter, you know, the cyclist on the footpath. That's why I got involved in public service in the first place. And yes, I've been a district councillor and a county councillor, but they've been stepping stones to helping me understand the issues that matter to Lincolnshire. And this role is something that's really important to Lincolnshire, and it matters to me. Being able to help people with community-based aspects as well as holding law and order is really important, and this role is the public personification of all of those things.
Can I just come in there?
Just on a sec, I just want to go back to Jack to see what he thinks as he's asked the question. What do you think that the qualities that the Police and Crime Commissioner need?
Well, I mean, I'd agree with everything everybody said, to be honest.
You can't vote for them all.
No, I know. But I think, yeah, knowing how to handle a budget is obviously important, considering what all the candidates have said about cuts to police force that we've seen across the country. So I think that's probably one of the greatest things. But you've also got to know the people that you're serving as well. So to have an idea of the communities you're serving is arguably the most important thing, I'd say.
Now, interestingly, in this election, it's a system where you get a second preference. So you put 1 and 2 in your ballot paper. I'm just interested, when you come to vote, you're obviously all going to vote number 1 for yourselves, but who would you all vote as your second preference of the candidates? Daniel Simpson, Lincolnshire Independents.
Well, I can't tell them to vote, so
you're
posing the question to them.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking all the candidates.
Well, they're obviously the voter will make a measured judgment.
No, I want to know what you would do. If you've got a second, everybody's got a second preference. I want to know what you would do.
At the last election, I have to say that I used the 2 votes, and I made use of them, and the result was satisfactory.
I know everybody's going to say this. Look, let's put aside the rivals tonight. Let's just say, who would it be your second choice of this election? Because that's the choice that the voters have got.
Well, they may well have, but I hold my cards to my chest on that.
So it's with you in the ballot box?
It is indeed, and that's what being an Englishman's all about.
Mark Jones for the Conservatives, who will be your second preference?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I think there is something that's quite misleading on the ballot paper, and that's that it says place your first vote here and your second choice here. You don't have to make a second choice. And I'll be honest, I think that is something that's wrong with the way that the ballot paper is designed. It implies you must make 2 choices, and you do not.
You don't have to, but who would you go for?
I wouldn't. I would be casting 1 vote for who I want to win.
Which, of course, as you say, people can do. Victoria Ailing from UKIP.
Yes, I feel the same. The bad wording implies that you have to use both votes. I'm not going to use both my votes. I'm only going to vote 1, and that's for me, because I believe I'm the best candidate to offer you the best policing. And I'm very blunt about it, I know, but I'd rather be honest.
Think of all the trouble people went to be able to vote, and you're saying, I'm only going to vote for 1. You're all saying it. Lucinda Preston, are you going to give us a name?
Well, what I will say is I genuinely think I'm the best person for this job, so I would only vote for myself. But can I just make the point? I actually don't have a problem with the voting system. I think it's great that people have a choice, and I think it's important that we empower ordinary people to have that choice rather than break the fact that we're giving them a choice.
It was worth a try, wasn't it? I didn't think they'd answer it, but it was worth a try. Now, are we going back to the audience? I think, Alex, have you got someone else with you in the audience who'd like to ask you a question?
Well, I've got a comment from sent in to us before. He can't make it today. It's from James Brown. Not that one. It's considering the debacle over the outgoing PCC's decisions with regards to the sacking and reinstatement of the Chief Constable. What experience will you draw upon when you inevitably negotiate with the police force if you are elected?
So this is to do with Alan Hardwick, who's leaving the post very controversially early on in his reign. He suspended the Chief Constable. He was later reinstated. I should say the Chief Constable was found to have done absolutely nothing wrong. Mark Jones, what do you think of the last 4 years and what's happened with that particular decision? And as the questioner said there, what would you do going forward?
Well, the first thing I'd say is we've seen this very week the importance of PCCs wielding the power to suspend a chief constable. We've seen that in South Yorkshire, so it can be done correctly when needed, and I think it's an important power that the PCC has. I don't want to obviously bring Alan into it. He's not here to defend himself. I can only imagine that the working relationship must have been a little bit awkward after the suspension and reinstatement of the chief constable. And to be fair, I think in the same way in our country we need policing by consent, you equally can't do a role like this without a working relationship with the police, with the public, and with everybody that you're there to try and work with and for. So I think it's really important very early on to establish those working relationships, but not to blur the lines. You are there to hold the police to account, but also to work with them to get the best results for Lincolnshire.
Yeah, Lucinda Press, it's a difficult balancing act. You can hire and fire the chief constable.
Well, in terms of holding people to account and having a great working relationship, that's what I do every day of my life as a teacher. And it's skills that I can draw on, and indeed with my department and with everybody across the school and outside of the school that I work. It is a difficult balancing act, but I think it's one that's easily achievable. And certainly for someone like myself with a lot of experience in the outside world, not just party politics, I think it would be something that I would rise to very well.
Daniel Simpson from the Lincolnshire Independent.
Yes, well, clearly we're not privy to what happened, the circumstances leading up to that position. One of the areas which I would express some concern about is that the appeals process of when that has happened is conducted by those people who are the peers of the chief constables. In other words, the appeals process is done by other chief constables. And I feel that that is a slight flaw in the transparency of the process. I think we also have to remember that police and crime commissioners are actually held to account by the police crime panel, which is made up of members of representatives from district councils and the county councils. So it's not a role that you can just do as you like. You are accountable to a body yourself. And I think it is very important that there is transparency around it. But as I say, coming back to it, I feel that the appeals process is something that needs to be overhauled.
Victoria Ayling from UKIP on this.
Well, I think this is where my legal background is kind of useful, because if you suspend someone, it's better to have evidence before you do it, because the costs can be astronomical if you don't. And I don't want to criticise the outgoing Police and Crime Commissioner because he isn't here. But also, I believe my legal background would be extremely handy to scrutinise the G4S contract, which is causing a lot of problems for people, demoralising a lot of the police out there on the streets. And I would like to look at it. All I've been offered so far is a very redacted version. I want to investigate that further, and my training will certainly help with that.
Victoria Ayling for UKIP. Now, you're listening to BBC Radio Lincolnshire, and you're watching us live on the Lincolnite, this special joint debate we're holding for the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Commissioner. In the interests of fairness, I should say, Alan Hardwick is not here, and he maintains, still to this day, that he did nothing wrong and he took the best advice. I just thought, out of fairness to him, because he's not here, just to give you his side of things. Let's go back to the audience, and I think Alex Rhodes has got another eager questioner.
Yes, got a question from Robert Stedman.
Hi. Should more be done to enforce equality and fairness by clamping down on race hate, homophobia, etc.?
So you're particularly want to know about hate crimes in general, whatever form that takes. Let's go, first of all, to Victoria Ayling from UKIP.
Well, I agree. I think any kind of hate crime, racism, anything like that shouldn't be allowed, and there should be zero tolerance. However, we have very many laws in place to protect people, and I would expect that to be adhered to, and that would be something I would be very interested in making sure that happened.
Daniel Simpson from the Lincolnshire Independent.
Yes, clearly, as a country, we respect other people, and it is absolutely essential that we give protection to people from all walks of life and backgrounds. And something which the Lincolnshire Police are doing at the moment revolves around, which it started off on the back of the stop and search, where Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary found them rather wanting in the paperwork and and the evidence around why they did it in the first place, you see. And now they're moving to body-worn cameras, and this will certainly go a very long way to protecting those people who, it works two ways. It will protect the police from mischievous counterclaims, and it will also protect those people who are stopped in the process of stop and search. And very often the stop and search has been felt by some people to be a matter of a race-related issue, you see, and I think it's absolutely vital that that's an area that is firmed up. But in the course of people's general behaviour out and about, I think race hate should be dealt with quite severely.
Lucinda Preston from Labour in on this.
Like all the candidates here tonight, I absolutely abhor all forms of racism, and combating racism and all hate crime would be at the heart of everything that I did. Only today I signed a charter, an LGBT charter, aimed at really reaching out to LGBT communities and working with them to combat those sorts of crimes. It would be at the heart of my strategy as PCC to work to combat all kinds of hate crime. And I think it should be a moral sort of prerogative, if you like, that the PCC does that. We need to uphold the law in this country. Generally, our country is a very fair place to live, but where things occur, we need to be really meeting that challenge and making sure we're making Lincolnshire a fair and equal place for everyone to live in.
Mark Jones from Conservatives, how would you deal with hate crime?
Well, I mean, we have got a consistent issue in Lincolnshire. In a rolling 12-month period, March to March, which are the latest figures we've got. The year before last, we had 333 reported hate crimes, and this year, it's currently 338. So it's very static, that number, which shows that we're not addressing the issue, and that is really important that we use that evidence to actually then understand what's going on. I mean, there are certain times when people in public office use slightly more inflammatory language than maybe is helpful. There are also situations where we have community issues that we need to get in and understand and obviously help with. Boston springs to mind as a particular challenge, but it's by no means the only issue we have in Lincoln of trying to bring different communities together.
Robert, just to go back to the questioner there, I mean, have you had experience of this in Lincolnshire? Is that what's behind your question?
I personally haven't had experience of it. It's just what you hear is going on and what you read in the newspapers and on the Lincolnite and on Radio Lincolnshire. And I think it's something that really needs to be addressed. I think increasingly Lincolnshire is a fairly divided society, and I think the situation is getting worse and worse. And there may be 338 instances that have been reported. I think there are vastly more than that that's actually going on.
Yeah, would you agree with that idea that there is a divided society?
Well, I think that is an issue that we need to address. How do we actually bring communities together? I mean, one of the things that I want to do is create a community commission for Lincolnshire to actually bring across the different community views from across the whole county, and that will inform policing, but it will equally help inform the communities about what the police are doing for them. And we've got to use initiatives to actually break down some of the barriers, to actually understand some of the issues. And the gentleman's very right. We need to understand what the level of the issue is. It's all right looking at recorded figures, but how do we get to those communities to get them to report to us?
Victoria Hailing for UKIP, but is the county divided?
Well, Boston was seen as the most unintegrated place in the country, and I believe that's regarding EU migrants. And there has been a massive influx of migrants to the area over a very short period of time, and this has caused a lot of strains and a lot of suspicion from local people. And I think a lot of it's education, as well as controlling our borders would be a help, but I think educating a bit more about the population, about, hang on, you know, these people have come here to work, just give them a chance. If their English isn't so great, help them to learn it. And the other thing is, with equally, the migrants that come here shouldn't see us as the enemy, and I think there's actually a fair amount of education needed on both sides.
Lucinda Preston as well from Labour. How do we get over this division that some people have picked up on and seems to be
I think we do need to get over these divisions, and I have to say that some parties, and I have to say UKIP's one of them, sometimes don't help with the kind of language they use. And it has to be said, and it has to also be said that there are a lot of tensions in our communities because people are genuinely under pressure. We have had huge cuts in services over the last few years from the Conservative government. And clearly, when resources are few, when we are seeing cuts here, there and everywhere, and there are fewer resources for everyone, it creates much more pressure on communities, and people don't tend to work together as much. So we do need more education. We need to create more community initiatives, and certainly that would be something I would be absolutely first and foremost looking at as a PCC. But we also need to make sure that we are holding the government to account for the cuts that they are making, because they do impact on communities, and we know that they do.
Just let me let Victoria Ayling come back on that particular point. You keep being singled out for the language
sorry,
you use.
I object to being our language. We have said controlled immigration. That's regardless of background or country. Controlled immigration. At the moment, because of our membership of the European Union, we don't have controlled migration. This is not racist. It counts for everybody. It's the numbers, not where they come from.
Senator Preston, Victoria Ayling says UKIP is just reflecting people's views on the immigrations and concerns about it.
I absolutely understand that people have concerns. It can feel very strange for someone who has lived in their street all their life to find that suddenly a lot of their neighbours have moved out and different people have moved in, and suddenly there's 5 people down the road who don't speak the same language, and it can feel quite strange and people can feel uneasy. But I think the key thing is to make sure that our communities are working together. And what I'm making the point is, I'm not accusing anyone of being racist. What I'm saying is that some of the language that's used by parties such as UKIP and by some of our national papers does actually inflame things. And we need to
I don't want to bring Daniel in. I want to give Daniel a chance to answer. Daniel from the Lincolnshire Independent.
The education system has a major part to play in this by starting with the young people who are generally rather more tolerant of each other than the adults, really, but to ensure that is part and part of their growing up, and they should be proud of the fact that they can integrate with people. Now, I think we do have to be very careful the issue of race has to be dealt with very carefully, because what should not be allowed to happen is that a country by its very nature, which has enjoyed free speech, should not find that it's not able to discuss matters, because over the years there has been a tendency for people not to discuss issues because that has been something which has been brought up to counteract any discussion, and we must be very careful about that, a mischievous use of that. But where there is intimidation of people from different backgrounds and religions, and where their life is being made completely and utterly miserable, then that needs to have the resources put in to deal with it.
Bring in the audience with Alex, because I want to hear somebody put their hand up on this point.
Yes, Scott, hand went up. It's Darryl. Darryl, have you got a question for the panel?
No, I'd just like to remind Victoria that the Police and Crime Commissioner has absolutely no power on immigration at all to Lincolnshire or this country. At best, mentioning it is unhelpful, and at worst, it's divisive.
Victoria Ayling.
I was asked to answer a question about migration. I know we have no powers to stop it. We have no powers anyway because we're in the European Union. But you are saying it's divisive what I say. There's a new McCarthyism. We cannot discuss immigration without being called racist, and this is wrong. Because things bubble under, services are strained, but everybody's frightened to discuss it. It doesn't matter where these people come from, it's the sheer numbers. And that is the important thing, controlled migration.
On this debate about immigration, interestingly, you'll have seen in the news, you'll have heard on BBC Radio Lincolnshire, seen on the Lincolnite, there now is a dedicated officer looking at the migrant community. Mark Jones for the Conservatives, do you welcome that? Or some people also think it's controversial because they don't think there should be a dedicated officer. What's your view?
I think it would be seen as controversial because it isn't necessarily understood what the role of that officer is. And what do
you understand?
Well, what I understand that officer is there to actually get the community that quite often have come from countries where they're very mistrustful of their police. We're very lucky in the way our police operates generally across the country. So these people are very mistrustful of the police, and actually having that close contact means quite often we can save a lot of police time and money getting evidence and getting information from a community that generally is mistrustful of authority generally. So this role is of advantage to Lincolnshire people, Lincolnshire police, and actually ultimately should save money for the taxpayer too.
Victoria Ayling, Mark Jones is arguing that that role will actually help deliver justice.
No, I don't believe it does. I believe that basically everybody in Lincolnshire deserves good policing and to be safe and feel safer. And we haven't got the resources, I don't believe, to give one sector of society more policing than the others. And whilst it's very altruistic, I would like to see visible policing for other people and the migrants, everybody treated the same. I think that's more segregation to give them their own officer. The other thing is we've got to be asking ourselves, the police spend £350,000 a year on translation services. And one of this is the use of agencies, which I would like to scrutinise, which start charging £90 for the first 6 minutes of a phone call.
So who would do that role instead?
They used to use people that were scrutinised and on a special database, a lot cheaper than that. And I would like to investigate getting rid of these rip-off agencies and looking at using the locals like they used to, who are all cleared to do the job. And I think that would save money. But again, I do believe having a separate police officer for migrants is more divisive than anything.
This is causing divisions, UKIP are saying, Lucinda, by having a dedicated officer.
I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding here about the role of this police officer. Fundamentally, as PCC, my concern would be fighting crime and making people feel safe in their communities. Having a dedicated police officer working with communities does create that trust, and it does mean that there is a better chance of solving crimes and people being safer. And with regard to translation services, often there aren't umpteen people who have got these skills, these particular language skills. These are specialist skills, and we need Lincolnshire Police to use them. This isn't about being altruistic or being soft or anything. This is about the police being able to do their job.
What about the UKIP suggestion from Victoria Edding is that lots of communities would like their own dedicated police officer, and it's not fair that one community should have one over another?
I think it's fair to say that communities often do have that. I certainly know that in my community where I live here in Lincoln, we have a fantastic PCSO that goes around our community, knows people, talks to people, has their ear to the ground. So actually, the point I would say is we need more of those, and that comes back to the Tory cuts that we've had, and we need more of that. What we shouldn't be doing is stopping the police doing their job, and I think it's important to highlight that the police are trying to do their job. And, you know, I want people across Lincolnshire to feel safe in their communities, and if it requires them to have these translation services so criminals can be caught, then that's what's required.
Daniel Simpson for the Independents.
Well, as I said earlier on, the job of the Commissioner is to get out there and engage with all sorts of people, the whole cross-section of society out there, and to meet with those representatives who have got issues and concerns around groups of people who've got concerns which they need to express. And it's on the back of listening to those groups and interested parties that the Commissioner then makes a decision about where to place the emphasis on policing. So I have absolutely no difficulty at all if the current Chief Constable and Commissioner have found that it's actually a necessity that they should have somebody who can engage with a particular community. And if that serves a purpose and makes that community better equipped and able to engage with the community in which, the wider community in which it lives in, then actually, that is a good result for the general well-being of people living in Lincolnshire.
Just bring
I have absolutely no concern about that.
Just Victoria, what Lucinda's arguing is that this would actually help solve crime if you can actually speak to the communities,
Absolutely,
and it will,
yes.
that's what the argument seems to be.
Well, there are translation services I just alluded to, which could be done a lot cheaper.
But on this migrant officer point.
The migrant officer, I'm sorry, there are police officers who cover Boston and other places with many migrants. Why are we giving them special treatment?
Mark Jones, the special treatment, says...
There's two things I would like to cover. Firstly, the translation service, 350,000 has been quoted. Well, that figure was in 2012. We haven't got any figures subsequent, so we can't assume that that number is correct currently. Secondly to that, it's misunderstood. The officer may be gathering evidence within this community to actually solve a crime that was committed to somebody in a different community. It does not necessarily mean this is an officer pandering to that community. It is working with that community to break down those barriers to help solve crime for everybody in the area.
I want to get another voice from the audience now, and I think Alex, you're with someone who's got another question for us.
Yes, I've got someone in the audience with me now. I think we're going to go with Stuart Minto first, who sent us a comment. HMIC have said that Lincolnshire Police commitment to maintain police numbers is not sustainable. If you get elected to be PCC, how will you ensure that police numbers are both maintained and expanded to the recommended HMIC numbers?
Yeah, this is a recent inspection report on the numbers, and it was found that it could not be unsustainable, as the questioner suggests. This is a big issue. I think there's 1,100 police officers at the moment. Are you likely to be able to keep that number, or does it mean that you're going to probably have to reduce the force further? Lucinda Preston from Labour.
I've pledged that I would maintain police numbers and PCSOs. We have had unprecedented cuts. We know that. What I would do, obviously, if elected, what I will do is I will look at the operations of the police. We know that there are many fantastic examples of collaboration, the EMOPS scheme, as we know, with other local forces that have saved money and meant that we can share resources with other police forces. There are ways of saving money that do not involve cutting police numbers.
How can you guarantee that?
I've pledged to do it, and I would guarantee to do it because there are ways that we can share resources that are untapped that we can do. At the moment, for example, Lincolnshire Police saved £4 million with the EMOPS scheme, and that is unprecedented. That's a huge amount of money. But I think we need to be clear about this, that in terms of somebody who can fight for more money, because every candidate here will say we need more money, which we do, I would be the one candidate that's best placed to do it. We have a Tory cheerleader for cuts. So in terms of cutting,
Mark,
I think whatever he says, he will be cutting.
You're a Tory cheerleader for cuts. That's what Lucinda Preston says from Labour.
Well, what I'm here to do is be positive about what I can do in this role, not answer political point scoring, which is exactly why we've got to be careful who is in this role in a few days' time, because this is more important than mudslinging around party politics. In particular, we've got some challenges around finance. Of course we have, and we've got to make every pound count. And that's making sure that our officers have the best possible equipment, whether it's mobile devices so that they're not having to constantly run back to offices with paperwork, whether it's body-worn cameras. I mean, the EMOPS has worked in some part, but equally, we've got firearms officers travelling to Leicester to start a shift and then getting a call out at the Deepings. I'm not entirely convinced that that's working exactly as it should. And equally, we've got a recruitment issue in that particular area. Numbers are falling. They're struggling to recruit to that area, partly because they don't like the shift patterns they're on and other things. So it's not the shining example that they would like it to be. It does need some work.
Lucinda Preston, on this, I've come to on the issue of funding. This has been going on for years and years. Whatever party has been in power, Lincolnshire Police have said the funding formula is wrong, whatever the colour of the party. So are you playing politics, as Mark Jones suggests?
I'm not playing politics. In fact, that's one thing that really disturbs me when someone says that. As Police and Crime Commissioner, you would be the voice of the community, and you are dismissing the community's views. I was only on the doorstep the other day, and somebody answered the door whose wife is a PCSO, worried sick that she's going to lose her job, loves serving her community. And in fact, as I've gone on the doorstep, and I cannot think the other candidates haven't experienced this, people saying time and time and time again, where are neighbourhood police? Why haven't we got more police? Why are they cutting police? And so to dismiss it as political point scoring is so typically high-handed. I'm an ordinary person, and I would be representing the ordinary people of Lincolnshire. And with regard to funding, can I say that when we last had a Labour government in, we had an unprecedented amount of money put into the police.
Let me bring in Victoria Ayling from UKIP. I mean, can you maintain the number of 1,100 police officers, or is it likely to be cut again?
I have a horrible feeling that the money be cut again, and that's why you need a strong PCC who is not frightened of the government to stand up for us, but is not in isolation and has a massive lobbying force. But I believe we should keep the numbers because visible policing is one of the best ways to deter crime. Now, it's no good claiming you can fill the gaps with volunteers. Recently, a big recruitment drive to find 1,000 volunteers produced 6. That is not the way forward. The way forward is PCSOs, officers, and we have some excellent volunteers, and they do a great job, but there are just not enough of them. We cannot fill the gaps with volunteers.
What has got to go? Something's got to go, though, if you're going to try and maintain those numbers.
Well, for a start, I'd like to scrutinise the G4S contract a bit more. Now, we can't just stop it because there could be capital implications. My legal head coming on here. However, supposing they're not performing as they should, there could be some compensation. Just an example. I'd also look at the translation services and maybe cut that down money-wise by using local people that they used to use before the
I want to
agencies.
bring Daniel Simpson on
Yes.
the Lincolnshire
Well,
Debate. Can you maintain the numbers, 1,100?
The present commissioner has done very well at maintaining the numbers, and he's been firefighting to a degree. What he did was drawn down on his reserve budget for 1.2 million to support PCSOs, following the cut from the county council on their support for PCSOs. Now, the force at the minute has a manpower of 1,100 warranted officers. It has 149 PCSOs, and it has 200 special constables and 195 support staff. Now, I am committed to maintaining that. Now, and furthermore, I am very interested in increasing the number of special constables. Now, you might say, well, where are you going to find this money? Well, in any large organisation, you can still keep squeezing the job. There will be some money to be found in there somewhere.
Well, we've had the chief constable saying that...
Well, I talked to him the other day. He's taken the fruit from round the bottom, but he's having to reach a little further at the tree to get it. But it's still there.
What would go then? What would you cut?
I wouldn't want to be cutting anything. I would want to be looking
at the numbers maintained.
I'd be wanting to look at what's actually in the reserves, what the capacity of those reserves are. Now, the other thing is, we need to have an understanding of what the current manpower does. What is it doing? Can there be any more of these people who are not doing jobs within the force, in bureaucracy within the force, who can be out on the street?
What, you think some people are not performing as they should be in their roles?
It's not about performance. It's about what they're engaged with, right? Are there any jobs within the force that can be done by civilians? Is there any more capacity for that?
Just let me bring UKIP back in this.
Right. I just want to come back on this because currently the PCSOs are not using all the powers they're warranted for.
That is quite
I would
correct.
want to work with the Chief Constable to say, why don't we use PCSOs more, for example, issuing fixed penalty tickets to speeding drivers, which they're warranted to do, but are not used widely in Lincolnshire to do. And that's an example how we can use our existing uniform force in a better way.
What I'm not clear from all of you, now just let me get this right, you're all saying you can maintain the 1,100. Just a minute, just 1,100, you're all saying you can maintain that number, are you?
Well, you've not actually asked me.
Well, yes, so let me ask you that now, can you?
Just to be clear. The first thing that we've got to do is ask, why is that the number? Who's decided, and is that operationally correct? Is the right number exactly 1,100 officers? That seems a bit strange to me. Or do we actually need 1,173? Or do we need
that's
one?
that's what the chief.
The point
said
I'm
he was.
making is, the point I'm making is, those decisions come as a direct result of the police and crime plan, the priorities that the public set through the PCC. So, what you've got to do is assess the right level of policing needed. And if I can just finish the point, it's getting the balance right between patrolling officers and investigating officers.
What I want to be clear on here is, because no one can tell me, because obviously to maintain this number, it appears you would have to cut something else. Can someone tell me what you would cut? Since the President, one moment.
Right,
No.
I've said I will not cut police numbers, and as I've said, I
But
would
how
look,
do you maintain
right,
that?
How
What
I
has to
maintain,
go?
I've answered your question in that. What I would do is I would look at how we can do more regional collaboration whilst maintaining Lincolnshire autonomy. And I think it's worth noting that Mark Jones hasn't there pledged to maintain police numbers. Can I just say that those numbers are very misleading when we talk about 1,100 police officers? Because at any one time, we can have people on sick leave, we can have people on maternity leave, or simply on holiday. So we actually have fewer numbers on duty, if you want to put it that way,
That is the figure
at
that
any
the
one
Chief
time.
Constable says he needs, though, isn't it?
So that's the number he says he needs. But of course, a lot of the time, they're having to work at slightly under that operationally.
I'm not clear on what people are cutting to maintain these numbers.
At the moment, in this moment in time, there is a requirement for police forces to have 90% of their warranted officers available for frontline services. We need to have a discussion of what the Chief Constable thinks of frontline services. Now, at the minute, Lincolnshire Police is operating at 83%, which brings to a figure of around about 913. Now, the Chief Constable has said there are 60 of those who he would not consider to be frontline, and they're himself and his immediate staff. So we need to get to the bottom of exactly who's available for what, because I do believe there is some capacity in there.
So you haven't got something in your mind at the moment that you would cut?
I would task him with coming up with some figures as to exactly who is available. You know, I want to know exactly who is doing what,
But won't
where,
you
and
already
what are the
have done
outcomes.
that?
Well, I'm committed to maintaining those numbers, and they've managed to maintain for the last 4 years. There is no reason why you can't
Victoria,
maintain for the
Elliott.
next 4 years.
Everybody says they want to review things and look at things, but I'm not clear from anybody
Right.
yet what it is that you would have to lose to maintain those
I
numbers.
would maintain the numbers.
How?
I've already said about scrutinising G4S contract, because I've also heard that the police are actually recruiting staff to fill the gaps for G4S. Now, to me, that sounds like a bit of a breach of contract. Are we really saving money with G4S, or are they actually costing us more money? The other aspect is collaboration with other regions. At the moment, there is collaboration with Leicester, Nottinghamshire, those areas, but nothing's being done much in Norfolk. And that is an area very worth working with, especially with rural crime.
All right, let's go back to the audience, and Alex is there.
Got a couple of questions in the centre of the room here before we move on. First of all, Colin, what's your question?
Thank you. I want to ask about what the candidates think might be the effect of devolution to a greater Lincolnshire when we suddenly absorb North Lincolnshire, North East Lincolnshire, which includes half the Humberside Police. What's their view on possibly the integration of the northern part of Lincolnshire with the existing Lincolnshire in terms of policing?
Yes, we do get a Lincolnshire mayor from next year who will have various powers. It won't cover the police, though. The Police and Crime Commissioner position's still in. First of all, Mark Jones from the Conservatives. Will this be good for the police and the role of Commissioner devolution, or will it not really have an impact?
Well, initially it won't have a direct impact, but in the fullness of time it could be that the mayor would take on the PCC powers. That is certainly something that would potentially make sense, but obviously there is a problem, because what you need to do is get a greater Lincolnshire police area to do that. Now, that is obviously something that's out of our control. It's up to the Home Secretary to do a review of policing areas. So potentially it could change things, and I certainly do think that not always does the south bank of the Humberside Police get quite as much focus on. I know the Grimsby area quite well, and that area does have a lot of crime issues, and it is somewhere that has challenges. The problem is, if it's absorbed into a greater Lincolnshire police force, those challenges will still exist, and we would have to find a way of helping them with some of those.
Would you be in favour of a greater Lincolnshire police force, have us back into the old?
Well, I'll be honest, it depends on what the deal was. It's the same as devolution. If they said, well, you're going to get no more money, but you're going to get a greater Lincolnshire authority, clearly that wouldn't necessarily be good for residents. If the deal was right, the structure was right, and it could be policed and managed properly, then it would appear to be the right thing for Lincolnshire residents.
Victoria Allen from UKIP, don't we already have a sort of East Midlands police force, but we still have the Lincolnshire name? There's a lot of collaboration goes on between.
Well, it sounds bonkers to me, because we are the second largest county in the country. We've got a big enough area to police. And the other thing, what always worries me about reorganisations, more layers of government, how much is it going to cost to completely cause this upheaval? To what? To do what? Apparently improve something. I can't see there being improvements. We are a vast area for policing as it is. And I think this is just an expensive spin.
Would you be in favour of the Lincolnshire mayor taking on the PCC role, as Mark has suggested might happen in the future?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because policing is very specialised. We've seen that there's been a lot of challenges in policing, particularly in Lincolnshire, with budgets and all sorts of things. To actually have one person doing that and all the other things connected with being a mayor, it's just not going to work properly.
Daniel Simpson of Lincolnshire Independent.
Devolution, as I see it, is the get out of jail card for the county council, really, in their dire financial straits. I don't think the Lincolnshire Police hasn't got the capacity to manage what it's got, really, if you want to be quite clear. So why do you want some more? And Theresa May has been quite clear in some of her work that collaboration with adjacent forces, she would see that if there was a taste for it, then there's no reason why the Lincolnshire Police should not be merged into the partnership forces, the collaboration forces that are around them.
Would you be in favour of that?
No, I'm not in favour of that. I want to see Lincolnshire Police maintain its own entirety. And I also don't want to see the Police and Crime Commissioner role taken up by a mayor, because that would very definitely be a political position. And in the fact that this county is rather blue, you'd fancy finish up with it being from that neck of the woods. And I actually think that that this business of devolution is actually just a red herring to actually
Lucinda,
get around the issues
Preston,
that concern us.
Bring you on this.
in
There's
Lincolnshire.
sort of two issues here. The whole idea of whether devolution would be good for the police or not, and whether potentially you'd be in favour of a greater Lincolnshire police force or maybe a East Midlands police force.
My view is that Lincolnshire needs to be autonomous. So whilst I am very much in favour of collaboration, I'm not in favour of an East Midlands police force because I do feel that Lincolnshire needs that autonomy. We have particular issues here that are relevant to Lincolnshire, and that is really important. What I do feel is there a bigger issue here, and it's fundamental, and for people listening at home, this is fundamental to them in their homes, is that people just need to feel safe and secure on the streets where they live and in their homes. So anyone listening to this will be thinking, this is all very well talking about this, but what about my concerns about security and safety in my community? And my point is that the Tory government have made these huge cuts. This, in a way, is a distraction from the fact that they are making these huge cuts to policing and continue to do so.
I want to go to the audience. You're on BBC Radio Lincolnshire 94.9 FM. You're also with us live on the Lincolnite website tonight, this special debate looking at the election for Police and Crime Commissioner for Lincolnshire. I think we're going to Leslie, who's in the audience. I think Alex has got to do a bit of running around here, Alex,
I'm a
haven't
little
you?
bit stuck at the moment, just shuffling through.
Alex is like the annoying person at the cinema who
I'm sorry, everyone.
comes and tramples all in
Where is
front of you.
Leslie? Sorry.
Where's Leslie? Oh, it's
All
the
the way over
worst
there.
possible.
Oh.
Go on, run, Alex. It's the worst
Are we
possible
running?
way.
Right. I'm going to be crashing through the live feed here.
Alex is making his way. Don't forget, you get more reaction to this debate on BBC Radio Lincolnshire tomorrow when I'm back on the breakfast show from 6. I was just trying to help you get there, get back into press.
I've done the exercise for the day. Leslie, what's your question?
My question is, would you let party politics stand in the way if a decision that betters Lincolnshire Police would go against your party's policy?
Lucinda Preston for Labour, would you go against your own party?
Would I go against my own party? In terms of what? Can you just repeat the question again, sorry?
Just wait for the mic.
Would you let party politics stand in the way if a decision that betters Lincolnshire Police would go against your party's policy?
Okay, well, can I make it clear, first of all, that when you are elected to the position of Police and Crime Commissioner, you swear an oath of independence, and you adhere to something called the Nolan Principles. I'm standing here, I'm not a county councillor, I'm not a local councillor at all, and so I'll be working in an independent capacity. The Tory candidate has not said, he has not confirmed that he will step down from his Tory post as county councillor, and I would challenge him tonight to make that decision to step down from that post.
Why
and
does
also,
that matter?
That matters because if you are a councillor for a particular party, there will inevitably be a conflict of interest.
Well, let's bring Mark Jones in there. Lucinda suggesting that you cannot do the county council job as well as the police and crime commissioner
What I would
role.
say, first of all, for me, there's only been one candidate that's constantly been talking about party politics. So it isn't an issue for me. It hasn't been an issue for anybody else. And the bottom line is, I've been elected to do a job for my local residents for 4 years. That ends next year. So do I feel that when there is no conflict of interest, I would step down from my portfolio of finance role, to be clear. As a backbench councillor, there is no conflict of interest. Now, that's no different to if you run your own business and then you happen to be discussing something in council that directly relates to the area of interest, you would step outside the room.
So just to be
that
clear
does
on
not change.
you would step down from your finance portfolio,
Absolutely.
but you would continue as a county councillor.
Yes.
Lucinda Preston, on that, he said that you're the only one playing politics. You keep mentioning the Tory cuts.
No, I think the reason that he's saying that is he doesn't want his own record or what he's saying, his own stance scrutinised. I think, I mean, it's interesting here that he is saying he would be a Conservative county councillor. Now, why would you stay in that role when you're wanting to be an independent police and crime commissioner? There would inevitably be some conflict of interest.
Why are you standing as a Labour candidate then? If you
I'm
feel
standing as a Labour candidate. I will say this.
Just let her answer the question. Let her answer the question.
Right, just let Mark's friends clap for a moment there. Right, no, I'll make this point. I would bring to that... No.
Let Lucinda answer, please.
Right, excuse me, don't interrupt me.
Let Lucinda
Right, so...
Let Lucinda answer the question, please. Let's have a bit of courtesy.
I would bring to this role my values, which I feel are Labour values about equality and fairness. Those are personal values, which are the values of my party, which I'm very proud of. If I'm elected, I would be independently minded, because you have to be as a police and crime commissioner. You absolutely have to be as a police and crime commissioner. That is why I would not be a Labour councillor as well. And so I've made it very clear about that. And I think I'm making a very clear point here, because police and crime commissioner is a very important role. You are the voice of the community. Everybody in that community, whether they are independent, whether they are Labour, whether they are Conservative, Lib Dem, whoever they are. That's why it's important that that person takes that oath of independence.
Just on that point as well, you're standing for UKIP, but you're saying too it's not a political role. I mean, it is strange people are standing for parties but saying it's not a political role.
Even the Lincolnshire Independents are parties.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I put the residents first. I'm a county councillor for UKIP. We have no whip. We have no hierarchy. But we do what is best for the residents and vote accordingly. And that's the way I've always been as a county councillor. As Police and Crime Commissioner, I would be putting policing first. I would stand down immediately as a county councillor, because I do not feel the roles are compatible. And also, I'm also on the National Executive Committee of UKIP. I will also stand down from that as well, because it should be truly non-political.
And just on this
political
issue,
I've stated in my election address that I would be carrying out the job without prejudice or political favour, and we're quite clear about that. And at the end of the day, as a police and crime commissioner, you are out to get the best result for the community that you represent. Now, the job of the crime commissioner, you are in effect buying the services of the police on behalf of the public that you represent. And you're going to be looking for efficiencies, economy, effectiveness and emphasis. And that's, you're buying it on their behalf. So therefore, you cannot have a political cloud.
how does it go with Lincolnshire Independence? Do you have to go back to all the members and say, this is what I'm going to do, do you approve?
No, not at all. No, absolutely not at all. It'd be none of their business, really. I mean, they'll be, as a police and crime commissioner, you'll be undertaking the role. I'm not going to have an office full of other people stood behind me saying, well, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. The fact of the matter is, once elected, you're very much on your own. You'll get on with the job in the best interests of Lincolnshire.
Let's go to the audience, and Alex.
Another question here, Scott, from a chap named Stuart. You had some comments before, but you've got submitted a question as well. What's that?
You tried a bit earlier, Scott, so I'll try it in a different way. Do you feel the G4 contract is or has worked well? And if so, do you think there's scope for further privatisation? And if so, where? Because we all want the numbers to stay the same. Everyone knows you've got to make savings. Where's it going to be?
Lincolnshire Independence, Daniel Simpson. G4S. Let's say you had a time machine and you could go back to before that was signed.
You asked me that question was asked to me by the Lincolnite, right? And I wrote on there, that's history. We're in the here and now.
But what would you have done at that time?
No, I wouldn't, because I'm not party what would have happened at the time. But one of the reasons why, in the last few years, there's been this emphasis on actually privatising everything, which I largely disagree with, because I feel in public service, the business of privatising has not actually yielded the benefits which they've tried to sell us, really, because at the end of the day, these companies are out there to make money. So as your job as Police and Crime Commissioner, you will be absolutely all over that contract all of the time, keeping them on their toes. There will be capacity. I suspect that G4S, when they quoted for this contract, actually didn't quite get their numbers right, and they can't actually deliver on all these issues. And I would take the firearms debacle as an example of how they've not been able to deliver.
What about the scope for further privatisation? What if they say, we can save you money? That's got to be good, hasn't it?
The reality is, none of these services, I mean, it was alluded to by one of the candidates that if they got in, they would look at bringing some of these services back in-house, you see. And the reality is, when you talk to people who are in and around it, the principal reason why these things have been privatised is to get around the business of pensions. So there is no way any of these services coming back in-house, because you have this pension liability.
On this idea of doing more privatisation, if it saved money, just very quickly, would you say you'd be interested in looking at that?
Well, you've now gone so far down the avenue that you can't stand on your own 2 feet, because this is what they do.
So you
see,
would?
they marginalise. Well, the thing is, you can't bring it back in-house because of
But
the
I'm talking
pension
about
issue.
privatising even more, perhaps. That seems to be the nub of
Well,
the question.
you are being forced down. If you know anything about the way government works, what they do is they screw your budget so you can't
So,
operate.
but on this
Just a
issue,
minute. You screw the budget so you can't operate, and then they force you down an avenue, right? So then you have to go there,
Right,
because the
I
only
wanna
way
bring
you're
some
going
other
to get any
candidates in.
money is doing what
Victoria
they want
Heading
you
at
to do.
UKIP, the suggestion is, let's go back, first of all, to the first G4. Would you have signed that contract?
I think looking at the way they've dealt with firearms, with the call centres not answering calls properly. I've heard some are asked to call the number themselves and then hang up to get the numbers up. Also, the police are having to fill the gaps. No, I wouldn't have signed it, and I wouldn't have signed for Serco either.
The suggestion is, though, it saves £6 million, the
But
contract.
does it? Does it?
You
If
don't think so?
What's happened is they've come in cheap with not enough staff to do the job. That's what I believe. Just hearing what's going on, I want to scrutinise that contract. We can't just bring things back in-house.
Well,
We
can
have
you
to
do
check.
that? Could you sack them? Because that would be...
If there has been a breach of contract or they're not complying with the contract, there is a way to break it without incurring expense. What I don't want to do is find that we have to break the contract and there's a big capital payout, and that is not fair on the residents.
Would you be prepared to break the contract? You are from a legal background, you've told us.
If I knew it's in the interests of Lincolnshire residents and we would actually not incur huge expenses and the service would be better brought back in-house, such as the firearms, yes, I would be the first to do it.
Mark Jones from the Conservatives, would you have signed the G4S contract?
I think the first thing I would say is candidates do need to be very careful, because one of us will be in a position of renegotiating this contract in the very near future. And we've got, from a legal point of view, to be careful about what we say about what is a very, very important thing for Lincolnshire Police. So I'm being careful, I suppose, about what I say in case that I'm in that position. The G4S contract was signed by the then Chief Constable in full light of the information he had available. We have not got that information, so it would be incorrect, in my view, for us to say whether we would or we wouldn't. However, I am committed to bringing back in the firearms licensing. There's 40,000 licensed firearms in Lincolnshire right now, and that element is not working correctly. Now, there will be...
Can you do that legally?
Well, the contract is at a break point next year, so yes. But it is at a point where that can be done. I have checked my facts before I'm speaking on that.
And on this, the question of...
The safety of Lincolnshire residents with firearms is more important than worrying about a few pounds in the pension pot. This is really important to people's safety.
And just very quickly, do you think this firearms, very quickly?
Break clauses don't necessarily mean that you can take things back in or not. It's a point where you kind of assess what's been going on, and I'm very nervous. Now, also, I'm very interested that you seem to know an awful lot more about the details of the contract than myself or any other candidates. Have you had sight of the unredacted contract? Because I haven't. I've asked for it.
Mark,
But nobody's given it to me.
I absolutely haven't. That would be totally inappropriate.
Then how do you know so much detail?
Let's bring in Lucinda Preston. The question, in a moment, the question was about would you have signed this, and also is the scope for further privatisation if it would save money, which I think was the point that the questioner was making.
Right, I'm just going to take each point in turn, and I'll also come back to the firearms point as well. First of all, would I have wanted us to sign that contract? No, I wouldn't. I don't believe, as been shown by the absolute debacle of the Serco contract across Lincolnshire that County Council has overseen, it hasn't worked. G4S, we've seen huge problems with the firearms, with the control centre there, huge problems. So if I could go back in time, I wouldn't. However, I'm a pragmatic person. We have that contract in place now. In terms of further privatisation, I would not want to see any further privatisation of police services, and I'll tell you why, I'll explain why. I don't believe, and has been shown by this, that it's better value for the taxpayer. I think that actually we've seen a reduction in morale amongst PCSOs and police officers since these contracts have been put in place, and clearly it's not offering value for money for taxpayers in that way. Going back to the firearms point as well, the G4S contract, for everyone listening at home, is a commercially sensitive document. So there is no candidate here can make a comment clearly about taking things back in or anything else because they don't know, they haven't seen that. And if they have, if they have seen anything of that, for them to be able to make that decision, then that's a scandal breaking on Radio Lincolnshire tonight. I don't think anyone has. So I think to say I'd bring this back in-house, etc., it's not correct. That person doesn't know
I'll come
that.
back to you, I just want to bring on the Serco issue, which is obviously a big issue for the county council at the moment. I mean, based on the Serco experience, this is not necessarily a good thing going to the private sector, is it?
Well, like I say, I'm saying with G4S, actually, there's an element of that I'm very uncomfortable with, and that is something that I'd want to address. The rest of the contract needs looking at. I mean, there are so many different elements to the G4S contract. There will be elements of that will need to operate in a different way to get value for money. Operationally, there'll be things that will need to change the way that they happen to get the best services for the people of Lincolnshire. So, it is at the right time with this contract to actually address those challenges.
And Daniel, very quickly on this.
I have some experience of dealing with the outsourcing of services, back office services, when I was a district councillor. So I do have some idea of what's in the background there. And there is a problem, and it's going to be a question of solving it. And it's no point in being negative about it. You're landed with the position, and the reality is the Commissioner and the Chief Constable are going to have to solve what the shortfalls are in that contract about service delivery, because it's all part and parcel of holding aspects of the police service
and Mark,
to account.
it was an inference from Victoria, I don't think Lucinda made that inference, that you had seen this contract, just for clarity.
I made it very clear, I have not seen the detail of that contract.
Okay, right. I want to move on. I want to go back to the questioner to see what they thought of the answers there on G4S.
You asked the question, sir. What do you make of the answers?
Thank you for your answers. Like I say, none of us do know the whole detail of the G4S, but the perception is it's just rubbish. From a public point of view. You need to look at it definitely, but that, to me, doesn't mean privatisation or outsourcing is off the agenda. If it's the right thing and it saves money and it keeps police on the street or even increases police on the street, it's the right thing to do.
Can I just say?
I want to leave this because we've discussed it long, and we are coming to the end of the debate now. I think we've got one other quick question, and then we're going to wrap up with final statements very shortly.
Yeah, just from the centre of the room here.
What would you do to help police officers react to cases involving individuals with mental health issues or disabilities, be they suspect, witness or victim?
Let's come to Victoria Ailing for UKIP on this one.
I believe that there are many people who enter the criminal world because of mental incapacity in some way. It could be Asperger's, autism, it could be many things. And I believe that education is very much part of making sure that the police can deal with this, because many times they may just need the help to stop entering the criminal world. Sometimes they just need some direction to take part in, the community and get jobs. And I would be very keen to ensure that police officers were actually made very aware of the symptoms of certain mental illnesses, which I believe could make their job easier and certainly create less criminals and actually make it safer for residents in the end, because there's so many mental health issues that people don't understand, and our police officers do a great job, but I just think maybe a bit more information about signs to look for so they know that maybe they're dealing with somebody that needs help.
Lucinda Preston, Labour.
Basically, we've seen a huge amount of problems over the last few years. There are more people who are coming into police custody with mental health problems. Because of the cuts that there have been over the last few years, mental health services are on a knife edge a lot of the time. In terms of how I deal with it, I would work with other agencies, with other third-party organisations to look at how we can coordinate services that better help those people. Things like offender management, link in with things like mental health, those sorts of issues are very important. It's a very collaborative role, and you'd have to work very collaboratively with other agencies to make sure that you were dealing with that. It's worth saying that often the Lincolnshire Police will have people in their cells who are mentally ill, and there is absolutely no place they can go to. Mental health services are on their knees, and sometimes those people are kept in police custody for 24 hours being looked after by police officers, and that's not a great use of their time and resources. So I think, again, it comes back to these issues of budgets for all these services, but certainly as PCC, what I'd be doing would be looking at how I can work with other agencies, other organisations.
Mark Jones from the Conservatives on this.
It is a significant issue that the police are used to firefight with people that have got mental health issues and other challenges. Now, we've got to tackle all sorts of things to get to the bottom of that, and whether it's tackling issues around drugs and actually things that create some of the problems that people have, but also it's actually how do we stop people that haven't committed a crime but maybe present as being at risk themselves or at risk to others from being dragged into a police cell because that's considered a place of safety. Now, in Lincolnshire, we have a triage car, which is excellent news, and that provides an on-site response to actually go to people and actually give them an assessment so that then they're not having to be brought back in. They can be taken to appropriate care. Now, the thing I would like to see is how do we fund an additional triage car? We've only got one for the whole county. An additional one, which would cost about £100,000 a year. We could get partners such as Public Health, the CCGs, and other partners working together to deliver another triage car, and that would stop a lot of people being dragged into the police custody, which would free up a lot of police time.
Daniel Simpson, Lincolnshire Independent.
Well, I've had some correspondence on this, and the police, in some ways, feel that some of these things have been foisted upon them because the appropriate partners are not doing their bit. I take a belief that we have a duty of care to those people, and it is our responsibility to exercise it with the expertise which they deserve. And it's certainly found in Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary that the police are at times a little lacking in engaging the appropriate agencies at the right time, and that is a matter that I will look into to ensure that that matter is improved. I do have some experience of having to deal with people with mental health issues, and I've spent hours in the Peter Hoskins unit in Lincoln, and I do have a more than clear idea about it. And for those individuals, whether the police feel it is their duty and their responsibility, whilst I have any issue, connection with it, they will look after those people in the manner to which they deserve, because it's not their fault, and we have a duty of care to them, and it will be done as professionally as possible and as expediently as possible.
Now, Daniel, thank you very much. You can continue the debate. I'm going to hand over to Michael Horton here on BBC Radio Lincolnshire for an after-show party, if there is such a thing for a debate, where you can get more reaction from the different candidates and their representatives. Do continue the debate online if you're on Twitter. Hashtag LinksPCC. But we'll now go through the closing statements. Each candidate has a minute to explain to you why they believe they should have your vote for Lincolnshire's next Police and Crime Commissioner. And we're going in the opposite direction this time, so we'll start with Mark Jones for the Conservatives.
As I've made clear, this role is about an individual being elected to do a job. And that is fundamentally what we've got to keep in mind, the competence, the ability, and is this person going to be able to deliver for Lincolnshire and the police? I believe I've got the right skill set for that. I mean, some of the areas that are hugely important for Lincolnshire we've not covered tonight: rural crime, making sure that reoffending rates are reduced. These kind of areas are hugely important and significant, and I believe that they are areas that I would look to tackle if elected to be PCC.
Mark Jones for the Conservatives. Victoria Ayling for UKIP.
Crime will not be a lifestyle option in Lincolnshire should I be Police and Crime Commissioner. Well, that's the ideal, but I've worked towards it. Zero tolerance of crime and antisocial behaviour. That means it's going to be easier to report all crimes, no matter how small, that people should be encouraged to, because by stopping the small crimes or criminals before they become big crimes or more prevalent is the most important thing. And there will be less victims of crime as a result. I believe I've got a legal background, I've got a deputy who has serious policing background to actually offer the residents a good team to do the job.
Victoria Ayling for UKIP. Daniel Simpson for the Lincolnshire Independents.
Well, I absolutely love working with the public, and I've had some long time in working with the public, looking after their interests and concerns, and actually fighting on their behalf to actually improve their lot. And to that, I bring that experience and would continue to have the best interests of Lincolnshire first. And in that role, I would thoroughly enjoy getting out, finding out what the issues are with people, and actually working on their behalf to actually place the emphasis on policing where they want it and where it is needed.
Daniel Simpson for Lincolnshire Independence. Lucinda Preston for Labour.
What I would say is I'm not a career politician. I'm basically someone who wants to do the best for their community. I am Lincolnshire born and bred. I've lived here all my life. And if you want to vote for a change, if you're sick of the status quo, and if you want to vote for somebody who'll tackle crime, regardless of whether you live in a village, a town or a city in Lincolnshire, then please vote for me.
Lucinda Preston for Labour. So you've heard all the comments. Do continue the debate online using the hashtag #LinksPCC. Thank you all for joining us. You've been watching and you've been listening to a joint debate staged by us here on BBC Radio Lincolnshire and the Lincolnite website. You'll be able to replay it at your leisure now. It's available on the BBC iPlayer and it will be available on the Lincolnite. You might even spot yourself on some of the shots. Join me on BBC Radio Lincolnshire tomorrow from 6 for more reaction on the breakfast show on BBC Radio Lincolnshire 94.9 FM. But I'll now hand you to my colleague Michael Horton for more reaction to tonight's proceedings. Thank you very much.